So welcome everybody to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we'll be going over the GCSE Maths practice paper of 2023 higher set 2 paper 3, which is a calculated paper. Now as always I'll include a question breakdown to give you some indication of if you get any of these questions wrong or find them a little bit more challenging, that you can see what topic it refers to and then maybe go back, revise and review that topic. So let's get straight into this practice paper of 2023 set 2 paper 3. So looking at question 1, so let me just zoom in so you can see a bit clearer on the screen, and there we go. So question 1 says simplify x cubed squared. So for this what we've got to do, now you can either know that when you've got brackets you multiply the powers, or you can see that this is going to be x cubed multiplied by x cubed. What do we do to the powers? We add them, so it's going to be x to the power of 6. For question B, when we're dividing, we take away the powers, so this is going to be y, and it's going to be 8 minus 2, which then gives us y to the power of 6. Question 2 then says write down the sum of all exterior angles in any polygon. Well, this is going to be a common fact that all exterior angles in any polygon is going to add up to 360 degrees. For question 3, it says work out an expression for y squared, and we've got told that y equals 5 root x divided by 2. So for this what we need to do is that recognize that y2 is going to be equal to 5 root x over 2 all squared. Now when we're squaring a fraction we square both the numerator and the denominator, so 5 squared is going to be 25, root x squared is going to be x, and 2 squared is going to be 4, so y squared equals 25x over 4. And if you wanted to, you could write that as a decimal, but I probably wouldn't advise it, but again you wouldn't be wrong. So you could say that y squared is equal to 6.25 and it's going to be x. Moving on to question 4, it says that a time of 10.4 seconds is given to the nearest 0.1 of a second. Complete the error interval. Now with these particular bounds, what you want to do here is take what the rounding the measurement is going to be. We halve that, so that's going to be half of 0.1 is 0.05, and then we want to add and subtract that number from the number that's been rounded. So what calculation is going to be 10.4 plus or minus 0.05, and that's going to be 10.35 and 10.45. Moving on to question 5, it says these two right angle triangles are similar, the key word there being similar. The question A says write down the value of cos x, give your answer as a fraction. So using this first triangle, which I'm going to call A, knowing that we've got trig, so if I label the elements, I've got theta equals x, this is the hypotenuse, and this is going to be alpha. So cos x is going to equal, not alpha, the adjacent over the hypotenuse, so it's a over h. A is 5 and h is 8, so then cos x equals 5/8, and that's what I want to write here. Then moving on to question 5b, it says work out the value of y. Well, first things first, what I need to do is work out what the length scale factor is. So if I just write b here, so the length scale factor, and this is where it being similar comes into play. So it's going to be the length on the new shape, which is 20, divided by the corresponding side on the smaller side, which is 5. So the length scale factor is going to be 4. So y equals, and it's going from small to big, so it's going to be 8 times 4, and that gives us an answer of 32. So the answer then for B is 32. Moving on to question 6, it says in a band with 3 members the mean age is 21 years old. Ashley joins the band. The mean age of all 4 members of the band is now 22 years old. Work out the age of Ashley. So taking this first bit of information here, if we just imagine we've got 3 people, and if their mean age is 21 for 3 numbers, so then if I just call this, let's say x, y and z, then to work out the mean I add the 3 people's age up I divide it by 3 and it tells me the answer is 21. So rearranging this, if I take the 3 over by multiplying by 3, that x, y and z added together is going to equal 63. Then taking this next bit of information we know, that when Ashley joins the band, that we know that if we have x, y and z, and we now include Ashley, that the mean age is now 22. So therefore, if I just write x plus y plus z plus a divided by 4, that's going to equal 22. So all of their ages multiplied by 4 is going to equal 88. Now I know that these three numbers of x, y and z all add up to 63. So 63 plus Ashley equals 88. So therefore Ashley's age is going to be 88 minus 63, giving me a final answer of 25. Moving on to question 7, it says John chooses a number at random from the digits of 1 to 4. Matt also chooses a number at random from the digits of 1 to 4. Write down the probability that total of the two numbers chosen is 10. Well, for 1 mark, this is going to be 0 because the maximum number that the total sum can be is going to be 4 plus 4, which is 8. So getting the 10 is going to be impossible, so it's 0. The next question then says work out the probability that the total of the two numbers chosen is more than 6. So if I start by having John and I write down the possible numbers we could have, and then I go for Matt and I go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then all I'm going to do is just do a sample space diagram. And so I've got 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, mistake there. And there we go. And what we're looking for is a probability of getting more than 6. So that's going to be 7 or more. So we can see that there's 3 numbers. So the probability is going to be 3 out of 16. Then just double check if you can simplify. You can't. So there is our final answer. Moving on to question 8, it says at a cinema, 3 adult and 2 child tickets cost £46. And 1 adult and 2 child tickets cost £24. Work out the cost of an adult ticket and a child ticket. So hopefully you can spot that this is going to be a simultaneous equation question. And so just by writing the scenario using a bit of algebra, we get this. So now we want to check to make sure we've got either the same number of A's or C's. Here we've got the same number of C's, so I don't need to do any multiplying. So then I check, are the signs of the C's the same? Yes, so we take away. So taking away the 2, I get 2 adult tickets is going to cost the difference between 46 and 24, which is 22. So therefore 1 adult ticket is going to cost £11. So then once I know that price, I can then know that 1 adult plus 2 child tickets cost 24. I know that 1 adult ticket now costs £11. So then 2 child tickets must cost £13. So therefore child ticket must cost 6.5. And there I've got my answers. So then all I then need to do is just write my answer in the allocated area. So this is going to be £11. And rather than writing 6.5, as it's related to money, I write the numbers to 2 decimal places. So it's going to be £6.50. Moving on to question 9, it says the area of an ellipse has a width of A and a height of B, and the formula is given by the area of pi times AB over 4 gives us the area. And it says that a sign is made from a rectangular metal sheet measuring 3.6 and 1.2 meters. And the question is asking us that the shaded sections are removed to make the sign. Work out the percentage of the rectangular metal sheet used to make the sign. So for this, what I need to do is I need to work out the area of each of these 2 shapes. So here I can see that A is going to be 3.6 and B is going to be equal to 1.2. So here then the area of the ellipse is going to be pi times 3.6 times 1.2 all divided by 4. So if I type that all into my calculator, I get an answer of 27 over 25 pi. And I'm going to leave my answer as that in its exact form. So then what's left is for me to work out the area of the rectangle. And that's just simply going to be 1.2 times 3.6, which is 4. And it's going to be, let me just do that again. So 1.2 times 3.6, it's 4.32. So then what we then need to do is then write the percentage amounts of the sign. So the percentage sign of the amount is going to be of the sign is going to equal 27 over 25 pi over the total, which is 4.32, and I'm going to multiply that by 100 because I want the percentage. And if I type that all into my calculator, I'm going to do now. So I've got, now remember I'm using the exact values. If you've rounded at any stage, then you should still get the correct answer. And so I get 1/4 pi. And then I want to multiply that by 100. And I get an answer of 78.5, and that's to 1 decimal place. Now they would accept generally answers between 78.5 and 78.7, or if you rounded it up to no decimal places, they would accept 79. So possible answers are 78.5 to 78.7 depending on your rounding, or they would accept an answer of 79%. Moving on to question 10, it says company A claims that their product are half as likely as to be faulty compared to company B. In a sample, 4% of the products from company A were faulty. Here are the results of a sample from company B. And the question is asking us to comment on company A's claim, and we must show our working out. So for this, what we want to work out is company B's faulty rate. So looking at this, we've got 32 over a total of 400, and we multiply that by 100, and we get an answer of 8%. So here we can see that 8% is double of 4%, or you could say something along the lines of 4% is half of 8%, but either way, company's A's claim is correct. So something along those lines would be absolutely fine. Moving on to question 11, it says that a teacher asks Amy and Jack to convert 20,976 into standard form. Amy writes 20.976 times 10 to the power 3. What is wrong with Amy's answer? So for this, hopefully you've got some knowledge of standard form, but the error lies in our number that we're multiplying by the powers of 10. So 20.976 should be a number between 1 and 10. So something along those lines. Don't need to be word for word, but I would say something along those lines would be absolutely fine for that 1 mark. For 11b, it says Jack writes 2.0976 times 10 to the power of -4. What is wrong with Jack's answer? Well, the error is in the power. So the Jack has used a negative power of 4 instead of a positive power of 4. So something along those lines again would be absolutely fine. Moving on to question 12, it says at a concert the ratio of men to women is 5 to 3, the ratio of women to children is 9 to 4. Show that more than half of the people at the concert are men. So what we need to do here is look at combining those two ratios. So here we've got the first ratio of men to women, and then we've got women to children. So looking at the first ratio, we've got 5 to 3, and in the next one we've got 9 to 4. Now what we want to try and do is, we've got women being used in both the two ratios, so we need to try and get these two numbers the same. And how do I do that? Well, if I multiply the first ratio by 3, then that then becomes 15 to 9, and that then, I know that 9 parts of women then equal 4 parts of children. So there is our final 3 sort of proportions of ratio that we've got. So now I can compare the parts. So men equal, and it's 15 parts out of a total of, and it's going to be 28 parts. So then seeing if this is more than half, so that's going to be 15 over 28, and if I convert that into a decimal, so 15 divided by 28 gives me an answer of 0.535714 blah blah blah. So here we can see that 0.53 is greater than 0.5, and there we have then proved what they wanted me to prove. Moving on to question 13, it says solve 4x squared plus 7x minus 3 equals 0, and we want to give our answer to 2 decimal places. Now hopefully by telling us that it's going to be, we want their answer rounded to 2 decimal places, basically means we need to use the quadratic formula. So we first make sure it's equal to 0, which it is. So a equals 4, b equals 7, and c equals minus 3. Then what I then want to do is just substitute those numbers into the quadratic formula. So I have minus 7 plus minus, and it's going to be 7 squared minus 4 times a times c, and divide that by 2 times a, so 2 times 4. Then I want to obviously typing it in for one value where I'm using the negative, the other value for when I'm using a plus. If you've got a calculator, the Casio FX991EX calculator, you can just go to menu, then go to equation, then go to polynomial, then select the degree of x, or highest power of x, which is 2, enter your ABC values, press equals, and it will give you your values. So the correct answer you should have is 0.36 or minus 2.11. And remember that we do need to round up to 2 decimal places, so there are 2 answers. Moving on to question 14, it says that a calculator gives a value of pi as 3.14159. An approximation of pi is root 40 over 3 minus root 12, all rooted, and it says show that the value of the approximation is within 0.01% of the calculator value. So what we need to do is actually type this into our calculator. So here, if we type in 40 over 3 minus root 12 all into our calculator, I should get an answer. I'm going to do this right now. Let me just bear with me. And what you want to try and do is use all the functions in your calculator to make this process a lot easier for you. So typing that into my calculator, I get an answer of 3.141533339. So then what I then want to do is show how close this is as an approximation. So for this then, what I then want to do is work out the difference, divide that by pi, which is the original amount, and then multiply that by 100. So the difference is going to be 3.14159 minus 3.141533339 times that by 100, and I get an answer of 0.00188%, and obviously that is within 0.1%. Moving on to question 15, we've got to rearrange this formula to make f the subject. So as you can see, we've got 2 f's. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put brackets around this denominator as we've got a fraction, and take that the denominator over the other side. So what I end up with is e6 minus f equals f plus 7. Then expanding the brackets, I get 6e minus EF equals F plus 7. Then at this stage what I want to do is get all the things with F's on one side and all the things else on the other side. So I'm going to take EF over to the side, and I'm going to take the 7 over to this side. So what that then becomes is 6E minus 7 equals F plus EF. Then what I'm then going to do is factorize. So I've got 6E minus 7, and then I've got F bracket 1 plus E, and then take this bracket over to the side by dividing, leaving me with a value of F equals, and it's going to be 6E minus 7 over 1 plus E. Moving on to question 16, it says the region of R satisfies these three inequalities. Show the region of R on the grid. So for this, what we want to do is we want to plot y equals 3, and I want the below that line. And then I want to plot x plus y equals 1, and I want above that line. And then I want to I want to plot y equals 2x minus 2, and again I want above that line. So you can do a table of values, or you can just work it out. So let's just zoom out so we can actually see what we're doing. So y equals 3. Now I'm not going to use a ruler, although I do strongly encourage that you do. So y equals 3 is this, and I'm going to do a dashed line. So that's y equals 3, and I want this region below. Then x plus y equals 1. So when x equals 0, y is going to equal 1, and when y equals 0, x equals 1. So my coordinates, I've got 0, 1, and 1, 0. So 0, 1 is there, 1, 0 is there. And then what I then want to do is draw a solid line, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it is a solid line. So let me just do that. Let's use a different colour. And let me just join those points up. And this is where it gets a little bit awkward. And like so, and just extend that line. And whenever you're doing a graph, always make sure that you are trying to extend your lines beyond what they've plotted. So this line here is x plus y equals 1, and I want above that line. And then the last line for me to then draw is y equals, and it's 2x minus 2. So then when I just need to find two values, so when x equals 0, y equals minus 2. When x equals 1, then y equals 0. So plotting those, I got 0 minus 2 is there, and 1, 0 is there. So then all I then need to do is draw a line through those points, and just bear with me. Like so, and let me just label that line as y equals 2x minus 2, and so we want above that line, so the region R is going to be this region here, and again shading is going to be optional. Moving on to question 17, it says the universal set of numbers containing the whole numbers from 1 to 100. O is the set of odd numbers, P is the set of prime numbers, and S is the set of square numbers. So for part 8, it's asking us to explain why there are no numbers that fall into the category of P and S. So here what we want to state, and there's a couple of ways in which you could say what you need to get the 1 mark, but you could say something along the lines of that square numbers have more than 1 or more, say 2 or more or should I say more than 2 factors, excluding 1, which only has 1. So you could say something along those lines, or you could say that there are no prime square numbers. And so something along those lines would be absolutely fine. Question 17b says, how many numbers are there that are O or P? Now, you might be thinking to yourself, for 1 mark, am I going to have to then try and visualize a number grid from 1 to 100 and try and shade in all the numbers that are odd, all the numbers that are prime? Well, if you think about it, how many numbers are odd from 1 to 100? Well, that's going to be half of them, so that's 50. Now, all the prime numbers are odd, apart from 1, which is the number 2. So all the prime numbers are going to be included in that 50, but I also then need to include the 1, which is a 2, which is not part of the odd clan. So the number then that are going to be odd or prime is going to be 51. Then moving on to question 18, it says A, B and C are 3 integers. A is 5 less than B and C is 5 more than B. Prove that AC plus 25 equals B squared. So for this, what we want to do is we want to translate each of these statements into algebra. So if A is 5 less than B, then basically A is going to be B minus 5. And for the next one, it says that C is 5 more than B. So then if we have C and it's 5 more than B, we need to add 5 to B so that it equals C. So these are the 2 little statements that I've then got. Now, if I make each of those equal to make B the subject, so I've got B and it's going to be A plus 5. And in this one, I'm going to have B equals C minus 5. Then working with B squared equals B times B. Well, I'm going to use 1B for this one, so that's going to be A plus 5. And for the second B, I'm going to use the next one, which is C minus 5. Now that then becomes A plus 5, C minus 5. And then if I expand that out, so I get AC, using double brackets, I get AC minus 5A plus 5C minus 25. Now so far that doesn't quite look like this, but then if I then use each of these, and let me just use the right colours. So if I then use A as 5 lots of B minus 5, and I use C, this 5C as 5B plus 5, and then I add the 2 other things that I'm missing. So I've got AC minus and I've got minus 25, and this all equals B squared. Then what I've got, if I neaten all of that up, I get B squared equals AC minus 5B plus 25. And let me just close the bracket because I forgot that bracket there. And then get that pen, so we've got plus 5B plus 25 minus 25. And then if I do a bit of cancelling, this minus 5B cancels with this plus 5B, this plus 25 cancels with that minus 25, and what am I left with is, well, I'm left with B squared equals AC plus 25, which is exactly what they wanted me to show. Quite a lot of marks for 3 marks in the way that I've done it. There may be other ways of doing it which may be quicker, like an alternate way what you might have done, but it all depends on how you see it. So an alternate way you could have done is if I used A equals B minus 5 and I've got C equals B plus 5, then if I want to work out what AC is, I multiply these 2 things together. So I get B minus 5, B plus 5. So AC equals, now hopefully from this you would have spotted that this is going to be a difference of 2 squares. So from this what we've got is B squared minus 25. Do a bit of rearranging and I get AC plus 25 equals b squared, which is what they wanted me to show. Now, clearly, I think that method is probably what they are most likely looking for, because as you can see, I've only really done it in about 4 steps. And the way that I did it originally was probably a little bit more confusing, but hopefully it kind of made a little bit more sense of where things come from. But again, when you see b squared being the subject, you're probably more likely going to work with that rather than the other. But there's always more than one way to get the same answer. Moving on to question 19, it says Nigel is using trigonometry to work out the size of the length x. He assumes that the triangle ABC is right angle. Using Nigel's assumption, work out the length of x. So if this is right angle, what we're going to do is use trigonometry. So this is theta, this is going to be the opposite, and that's going to be the hypotenuse. So I'm going to be using sine. So I've got sine 35 equals the opposite over the hypotenuse. So then x equals 4 divided by sine 35. And if I type that all into my calculator, I get an answer of 6.97, and that's to 2 decimal places. Moving on to question 19b, it then says, in fact, angle ABC is 80 degrees. And how accurate does this make the answer in part A? You must show you're working out. So if this then becomes 80 degrees, and let me just get rid of all of this notation, then what I find is that this is now going to turn into an advanced trigonometry question. So here I know 2 angles and 2 sides. I'm going to be using the sine rule. So this is going to be little a, this is going to be capital A, this is going to be B, and that's going to be capital B. So here I've got x, if I just write B here, so x over sine 80 equals 4 over sine 35. Cross multiply, get x sine 35 equals 4 sine 80. So x equals 4 sine 80 divided by sine 35. And if I type that all into my calculator, I get an answer of 6.86 centimeters, and that's to 2 decimal places. It then asks me to comment on how accurate it's going to be. So I'm comparing this number here to my answer in part A, and you can say that basically they are pretty much the same. So they are pretty much the same, or if you want to go more mathematical, you could say they're similar. So the answers are very similar when rounded to, let's say, no decimal places or 1 decimal place. They would both, would only be a difference of 1. So I would say it's pretty accurate. So something along those lines would have been absolutely fine for that 1 mark for commenting. Moving on to question 20, it says that an object is dropped from a height h. It takes t seconds to reach the ground. H is directly proportional to square root of t. So I think this kind of tells us what topic this is going to be related to, which is direct proportion. We've got our h and t values. We're then given, we want to work out an h value when we've given a t value. So for this, we want to start by writing the notation. So h is directly proportional to t squared. I then replace the proportional symbol with equals k, and then I'm going to use these numbers to work out what k is. So I've got 80 equals k times 4 squared. So k equals 80 divided by 16. So k equals 0.5. So then, 5, sorry. Then from the next one, what we then need to do is, now we know that k equals 5. We know that the formula is h equals 5t squared. So then from this, what we can then do is to then substitute t equals 7.5. So h equals 5 times 7.5 squared. So then typing that into my calculator gets 5 times 7.5 squared, which gives me an answer of 281.25. Then moving on to question 21, it says ACB is a straight line. A is the point 0, 12 and B is the point 6, 0. C is the midpoint of AB, and the line DCE is perpendicular to the line ACB, and we want to work out the equation of DCE. So we want to work out the equation of the line DE. So there's a couple of steps which we need to do to get the 5 marks. So the first thing we need to do is work out the gradient of AB. So we draw the triangle, and the gradient is the height of that triangle divided by the base. So it's going to be 12 divided by 6. Now we know that the line's going down, so it's going to be negative gradient. So then the gradient of AB is -2. So from this, because I know that the gradient is perpendicular, we then know that the gradient of DE is going to be the negative reciprocal. So it's going to be +1/2. So then moving on to the second part, I then need to work out C. So the midpoint of AB equals C. So to work out the midpoint, I add the two x ordinates of these 2 points. Let me just write this as 0, 12, and B is 6, 0. So adding the x ordinates, I get 0 plus 6 divided by 2, and adding the y ordinates, I get 12 plus 0 divided by 2. So the coordinate of C is going to be 3, 6. So now I know a coordinate, I know the gradient, so now I can use, so step 3, I'm going to use y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. So then here I substitute the numbers in, so I've got y minus 6 equals 1/2 x minus 3. And then expand the brackets out, or taking the 2. There's loads of ways in which you can do this. So I've got y minus 6 equals 1/2 x minus 3 over 2. So I get y equals 1/2 x, taking the 6 over, and that's going to give me an answer of 4.5. So I could change that to 1.5 to make it easier, and that's going to be 4.5, or 9 over 2. So I could write y equals 0.5x plus 4.5. Now again, there's loads of different variations you could give for the correct answer. I could have written it in fraction form, so I could have 1/2 x plus 9 over 2. I could have multiplied everything by 2 to get rid of the bracket, so I've got 2y equals x plus 9. So any of these particular ways of writing the same equation would be absolutely fine to get the marks, because it's not actually specified how they want me to write the equation. Moving on to question 22, it says AED is a straight line, and the question is asking us to work out the vector of AB. Well, to get from A to B, I'm going to go from A to E and then E to B. So A to E is A plus 3B, going with the arrow, and then E to B is also going with the arrow, so that's going to be minus A plus B. Simplifying each of these, they cancel out, so it just leaves you with an answer of 4B. Then says that ED is equal to 1/3 of AE and DC is equal to minus 1/3 A. And the question is asking us to prove EC is parallel to AB. So if EC is parallel to AB, then either EC equals something times AB, or that AB equals something times EC. So this is the kind of rule that I'm going to be using to prove that AB is parallel to AB. So going back to the diagram, and let me just write down that key bit of information that we can't see. So I know that ED is equal to 1/3 of AE, and I know that DC is equal to minus 1/3 A. So DC, I can just write here, is minus 1/3 A. So first things first, I want to work out, I already know what AB is, so I know that AB, let me just write this as B. So AB is equal to 4B. So what I then need to do is I need to work out what EC is. Now to get from E to C, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from E to D and then D to C. So I need to work out what E to D is. So E to D is equal to, now using this, I know that that's a third of A to E. Now A to E is A plus 3B, so it's going to be a third of A plus 3B. Now if I expand the brackets out, I get a third A plus B. Now if I just put a little box around that, and this is going to equal this, and DC is going to equal this, so therefore I've got EC equals a third A plus B plus minus a third A. And then as you can see from here, that's going to cancel with that, so I'm just left with EC equals B. So then what I then want to do is compare, how do I get from this to this? Well then, as for EC equals AB, we then know that EC is parallel to AB. And there we go. Moving on to question 23, it says the graph with the equation y equals x squared is translated by vector 0, 2, which basically means it's been moved down 2 places. Circle the equation of the translated graph. So if it's been shifted -2, so then it's going to be this one. Then for question 24, it says f of x equals 9x plus 4 over 7. We want to work out the inverse function. So for this, if you remember the steps, it's going to be make the f of x equal to y. And then what I then want to do is I want to make x the subject. So I get 7y equals 9x plus 4. 7y take away 4 equals 9x. So 7y minus 4 divided by 9 equals x. And then from this I replace the x with the inverse of x and I replace the y with x, leaving me with this as my final answer. Then moving on to our last question, it says here is a sketch of the speed time graph for the part of a journey. The average speed from 0 to t seconds was 7.2 and we want to work out the value of t. Now for this, what we want to do is we know that the area under the lines is equal to the distance in a speed time graph. Now we also know that we can work out the distance, and that distance also equals speed times time. And just put an orange box around that. Now using this information here, that we can see that if the speed equals 7.2, that the total time is going to be from 0 to t, so time is going to be t. So that means then that distance equals 7.2 t. And I'm just going to just highlight that. So the next thing for me then to do is now work out the area under this curve, under this line. So if I label the 3 sections as A, B, C, so the area A is going to be a triangle, and I know that the base of that triangle is 8 and the height of that triangle is 9, so area A is going to be 8 times 9 divided by 2, so that's going to be 72 divided by 2, which is 36. I then work out what area B is, so let me just do that in another colour. So area B is a rectangle, and that's got a length of 9 and a width of 6, so it's going to be 9 times 6, which is 54. Then to work out area C, which is the trapezium, So let's have a look at what the dimensions are going to be for this, and I'm slowly running out of colours. So for the trapezium, this distance here is 6, this distance here is 9, and the height of that trapezium is going to be t minus 14. So then area C is going to be 6 plus 9, which is my AB, multiplied by the h, which is t minus 14, and I divide that by 2. So simplifying, 6 plus 9 is 15. I've got t minus 14 divided by 2. Now if I use my calculator to help me expand the brackets, that's going to be 15t minus 14 divided by 2, and that equals 7.5t minus, oh, I've just remembered I've not multiplied the 15 by 14, so 15 times 14 is 210, and half of that is going to be 105. So that's my area of C. So then the total distance, and let me choose a different colour. So the total distance by looking at the area under is going to be equal to 36 plus 54 plus 7.5t minus 105. Now if I neaten all of this up, then what I end up with is 36 plus 54 minus 105, and that gives me minus 15. So it's going to be 7.5t minus 15. Now this area here, if I just highlight that, so that distance must be the same as that distance there. So what I end up with is 7.5t minus 15 equals 7.2t. Then I've got an equation with t on both sides, so all I then need to do is to take one from the other. So I've got 7.5t minus 7.2t equals 15, so 0.3t equals 15. So t equals 15 divided by 0.3, and if I type that into my calculator, 15 divided by 0.3, it gives me an answer of 50. So t equals 50. And there we go.